wanted to be an illustrator. None of the artists working for me wanted to devote their lives in comics. They were there as a way, as a stepping stone onto another thing. So that was the character of the shop. I have one little anecdote to tell you before I get thrown off this panel with the Harry Chesler thing. In 1940, 41, I was up at the, I had my studio when doing The Spirit, and there was a fellow, Chuck Kadira, working for me, who was doing Black Hawk in our shop. I created a feature called Black Hawk, and he took it over from Dave Berg. And he came in the shop one day. We had Lou Fine was working, Chuck Mizushin, Tex Blaisdell, Dave Berg, and Chuck Cadera. Cadera, a little, very feisty little Italian boy from New Jersey, came in and said, he always called me boss. And he said, hey boss, he said, you know, you were talking about we could use an inker. He said, I got an inker. So I said, well, you know, bring him up. He said, well, he said, you got to stay here at noontime. It's got to be at 12 o'clock. I said, why 12 o'clock? He said, order a sandwich up and eat it. So I ordered a sandwich up, and I'm sitting munching my sandwich. The door opens. This was in Tudor City, an apartment. Tudor City, we converted it to an office. And he comes in with this trembling young kid. And he says, this kid's name is Alex Kotsky. And I said, well, oh, Alex. And he's there looking around, terrified. And he shows me his portfolio, and gee, it blew my mind, this kid could ink and brilliant inking. So I said, gee, it's just the guy we need to back up on this. So I said, well, look, I tell you what, come in on Monday, and we'll set you up. We'll get a drawing board for you. So we stood there shifting from foot to foot, and Kadira says, hey, boss, you don't understand. He's got to start now, right now. So I said, what do you mean right now? And he says, you can't wait till Monday? No, he says, sit him down right now, let him sit at my desk. He says, I'll go back and get his hat and coat. I said, what do you mean? He said, he's working for Harry Chesler. Chesler wouldn't let the kid out for lunch. He had to smuggle him out the back way to get him out there. And Kadira went back and got his hat and coat and a couple of pencils. He had a little pencil box that he carried with him with a couple of brushes and brought him. And that's how Alex Kotsky came away. We smuggled with him. Well, I tell that anecdote because that's pretty much the way it was. People were raiding each other because there was no established core of comic book artists with any background or training in those days. So the publishers and the production houses were stealing from each other. But that was Harry Chesler. Harry Chesler was really...
Right, what Alex Kotsky's doing now.
Oh, he's doing 3G.
He's doing syndicate strips.
3G.
He worked for me for a while. He did some romance stories, yeah.
Brilliant young man.
But he didn't shake when he came up. I guess
he got all shook out.
That's a nice line.
I forgot what was the question. Oh, just about the
what it was like in those days.
Yeah. Well, I kind of would like to know. The three of you were all working in the business at the same time. Now I know Julie and Martin knew each other. Will, did you know about these guys working over in National?
No, I didn't know. See, beginning with 1950, 51, I started a company called American Visuals, which was designed to utilize comics as a industrial teaching and instructional tool. And I actually moved myself out of what I called in those days entertainment comics. I lost interest totally in entertainment. As a matter of fact, I stopped doing The Spirit in that period because I was really not interested. So from there on in, I became a publisher, and I was publishing instructional material and on into utilizing comics as a school thing. All my life, I always regarded comics, the medium, as a valid literary form that had really not yet fully achieved its potential. In fact, I feel that way still today. And the things I'm doing really is still probing and exploring the additional potential. So I left the field, and I didn't know Julie until maybe 5, 10 years ago. I guess it's the first time we met.
I think it's in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's right. First time we met. I'd heard about him, I knew about him, but I had no connection with Marble or DC at all. As a matter of fact, in the earlier days, I was persona non grata with most of those houses, certainly with Donenfeld's house, because I wouldn't give up ownership of anything I produced. If I walked in with a creative character I created, I wanted to own it. And this was not the condition of trade in those days. And
all these, now I know you own Spirit. Did you own then Blackhawk and Sheena and all those other cars?
I owned Blackhawk. Sheena I owned, but it was part of the Eisner and Iger. Eisner and Iger was a corporation. I owned 50% of the stock, and Jerry owned other 50%. We had a stockholders agreement between us that whoever left first was legally bound to offer the remaining, his 50% of the stock to the surviving partner. And that was to protect the surviving partner from getting a partner he didn't want. So when I left Eisner and Iger to do the Spirit and start my own operation, and I offered my stock to Jerry, and of course part of the assets of the corporation was Hawks of the Seas, Sheena, which I created. My job in Eisner and Iger was doing pretty much what I always do, creating properties and producing. I was the working, the shop partner, so to speak, and Iger was the sales partner. Any of the stories to the contrary was notwithstanding, that was the condition of the shop. You can ask Jack Kirby, who worked in the shop at the time. His name was Jack Kurtzberg. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I know what happened to Jack Kirby. So those were the conditions.
When did you get re-involved, Will?
I got re-involved actually as a result of Phil suing. I was a chief executive officer, CEO and chairman of a company that we had acquired called Crofts Educational Company. This was a company producing educational material for schools and what we called social studies and school enrichment material, which began with the utilization of the comic medium as a teaching tool for lower grades. And we acquired this company in Connecticut that was providing training material for teachers on the school district level, and I felt it was a very good system. So I became president and chairman of that company. I'm sitting in my office one day, my secretary comes in. This was 1971 or something like that, 70, 71. And she said, there's a man on the phone here. He says he's in the comic book business of some kind, and she says there's some kind of a convention and he's inviting you down. She said, are you a comic book artist? I sit there patting my three-button vest, you know, looking very much like a CEO. And I said, well, that was, yes, it was my time. Take on the phone, it's Phil Sewing. And he said, well, you know, I don't know if any of you knew Phil Sewing. He had big, booming voice.
School teacher in Brooklyn.
Wonderful, real Brooklyn, though. An Italian-Irish background, who spoke pure Brooklyn Italian, you know. And he said, well, I said, yeah, he said, that's Phil Sewing. I said, never heard of you, Phil, but you sound well. He said, we're having a comics convention. He says, you gotta come down. I said, what do you mean I gotta come down? He says, you'll be surprised. Take my word for it, believe me. Come down. They were holding it in the, not the Pennsylvania, the one on 42nd Street, the one which is now occupied by Hyatt. Whereas occupied, I forgot the name of it. The Commodore. It was the Commodore Hotel. And he says, come down. So I did come down, and to my astonishment, it was a convention. And I realized suddenly that all these things that we had been producing all these years suddenly existed. And by the time the day was over, I had met Dennis Kitchen, who had long hair and a beard, and a lot of other guys who were walking, a lot of guys walking around with the t-shirts that didn't quite meet their pants, you know, their bellies hanging out. Guys,
It hasn't changed much.
guys walking around with
Girls.
a lot of kids with severe cases of acne, with glasses that look like the bottom of Coke bottles, you know, that kind of stuff, peering at you. But all guys walking around carrying copies of the Spirit. You know, I had buried that character a long time ago. I thought it was dead. And I think I met Art Spiegelman there. I met a lot of the underground. It suddenly hit me that the underground, the thing that intrigued me was the underground. And I suddenly realized, apparently, as I'd always done, years of publishing kind of sharpens that perception for you. You're looking for trends. And I saw that the medium had continued to grow, and it was now being used by the so-called underground cartoonists in its proper form, as truly a literary medium. They were using comics not to entertain and provide teenage fantasies, but to make statements, say something, and use it as true literature is used. So I came away, you know, very, very thoughtful, and as a matter of fact, I developed a relationship with Dennis Kitchen at the time, who was a young, aspiring publisher. He asked me if he could publish Spirit pages, and of course I let him do it. And a couple of years later, I guess it was a year or two later, I had an opportunity to sell my stock in the publishing company that I was running, and I did. And I found myself at liberty. As a matter of fact, I got a call from Stan Lee, who said, "I hear you don't have a job." I said, "Well, technically that's true." And he said, "Come on down." He said, "We're talking about," he offered me a job with Marvel that I thought was a suicide mission. And I thanked him, but we retained a good friendship, and I realized that here was an opportunity for me to go back and explore the area that I had always felt was very important. So it was the underground that made me go back into doing, so by 1979, a few years later, in 78, I started Contract with God, and the rest of it is kind of history.
It seems to me, Will, that your experience in between having left the Spirit initially and having gone back, has stood you in good stead. I think that experience has developed a great deal.
No question, no question about it. I don't think any experience I had, either peripherally or even remotely away from this field, has been wasted, as far as I'm concerned. Even the days when I worked, I think I was telling you yesterday in the panel, there were days when I worked in the print shop cleaning presses, was very helpful to me because it is very important. It's one of the basis on which I teach this medium. It's very important for every comic book artist to understand the technology of the medium he's working in. And of course, as I sit here now, I feel a little like Martin Luther King. I said, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last.
Well, what's half the guys that go with it?
Wait till I get on the balcony.
Let's throw the same question over to Julie.
What was the question?
Okay, yeah, there was, back behind all that, there was a question. The question was, how much were you aware of what was going on with your peers, in particular with Will here? What was the rest of the comics industry while you were working there?
Well, I think I read a tell about things that happened before I became involved in comics. I was thinking about it while Will was rambling on. I think the chances were at least 5 to 1 against my being involved with DC Comics. Actually 5 to 1 or more, and I'll tell you why. I was the agent for science fiction writers at the time, and one of my clients was Otto Binder. And he talked about writing comics, and I paid no attention. He worked for Forces magazines, and by the time he was through, he had written 500 Captain Marvel stories. His brother Jack was the illustrator. I believe he did Mary Marvel, a few other things. Another client of mine was mainly Wade Wellman, who I believe was involved with the Spirit to a certain extent, and wrote for Forces magazines also.